Hello, Gen Genies. It's me, Julie.
And Rich.
Before we get started today, we want to let you in on some exciting news. We have launched our new Patreon page for the podcast.
Woohoo! We are super excited about this new chapter for CutOff Jeans.
So, Patreon is a website where listeners like you can pledge a small monthly amount. We're talking only $5 or $10, guys, to support the podcast and help defray the cost of bringing you the show each week.
To be clear, CutOff Jeans will continue to be absolutely free. But to thank you for your support, we are going to offer our patrons some fun little extras.
Like early access to the podcast every week, where you'll get to hear the latest episode before it's released to the general public.
And why not make your friends jealous with exclusive patron-only CutOff Jeans swag?
Fancy. And here's something you guys have been asking for, and I'm really looking forward to this. I'm going to host a monthly, hour-long, online Ask Me Anything session where patrons at the $10 level can literally ask me anything.
Anything? You're a brave woman, Julie.
You know, I know. I'm also going to give access to my blog, Are You My Father?, where I tell the story of my search, actually it's my life story basically, for my biological father in even more detail than I did on the podcast.
Wow, your blog was the original inspiration for CutOff Jeans, wasn't it?
It was.
Wow. Well, all patrons at any level will receive a shout-out on the podcast along with our undying gratitude for your support.
Yep. You guys know that this show is a labor of love for me. It's something I'm very passionate about. It'd mean so much to me if you would consider supporting our work here on the podcast by going to patreon.com/CutOff Jeans podcast.
That's Patreon, patreon.com/CutOff Jeans podcast.
We'll add a link to it on the podcast and on the Facebook page. Thank you all, my Gen Genies.
And now, on with the show.
Woo!
Is your family tree a mystery? Are you fascinated by genealogy? Well, hip, hip, hooray, let's talk DNA with Julie.
The truth is in your genes.
In CutOff Jeans.
Welcome to CutOff Genes, the podcast that helps you find your truth using nothing but DNA. I'm Julie Dixon Jackson, and I'm a genetic genealogist, henceforth known as a Gen Genie.
And I am Richard Castle, the producer and co-host of this lovely podcast. How is the lovely Julie doing today?
I don't know if lovely is the word.
Well, you're looking lovely on my screen.
Am I? Am I really?
You are, actually. I've been in a lot of Zoom meetings, so I see a lot of Zoom people, and I think you're in the top tier.
Wow, and I'm me with no makeup on.
Well, you know, it happens. What's going on in your life?
Oh, so much. Yeah, everything is fine. I went to the optometrist today. I'm starting to go to things, but I'm always wearing my mask. And, we're already started to have a second wave, but as long as people practice social distancing and wear their masks, I think we'll be fine. There's going to be some more outbreaks, but just be nice to each other, guys.
I know. My dentist called me to remind me I had a teeth cleaning scheduled, and I said, can we just put it off for a month? Because they had literally just reopened their office, and I just didn't want to be, this is terrible, but I didn't want to be the first guinea pig to go in there.
I don't blame you.
I want them to work out the kinks and getting everything clean and all that, I'll never forget, this is so, it's stayed with me all this time. So like right after 9/11, I flew to Europe in, it was a few months later, and all the security protocols been beefed up. And it was like my first time back at the airport since this had happened, and I was nervous. I'm taking off my shoes and I'm doing all the things I'm supposed to do. And I realized at one point I had put something up on the security desk before I walked through. And then I picked it up and I realized, that didn't even go through, and they didn't catch it. I mean, this was early on, and believe me, our TSA are great, and they've worked out the kinks, I think, because every time I've flown since, that wouldn't fly, so to speak. But I remember thinking, oh my God, how did that get through? And it was a little terrifying. So I feel that way about the dentist right now. I want to just wait until they figure it out.
Yeah, I'm kind of doing that too. I mean, I've been the one going to the store, So I've been out and about more than anybody else in my family, and I'm fine. And I also started taking hair clients again. If you would like to come over.
Oh, good for you.
But only people that I know have been social distancing, and existing clients.
Because when I watch all those people out protesting, I would love to join them, but I'm really too much of a scaredy cat. I'm totally behind the cause for Black Lives Matter. Yeah. I'm just like thinking, you know what? It just doesn't look like a healthy thing for me. Like
it's such a weird time in the country, isn't it?
It really is. And I'm happy they're doing it. Like, I'm happy they're protesting.
Let's just talk about this a little bit.
Yes.
Okay.
It's the biggest news story of our time right now.
So, guys, and I'm just going to say, we try not to be a political podcast, but this is not politics.
No,
okay?
It's people, it's lives.
Yeah, it's people and it's lives. And even though people politicize it, the bottom line is people are people. And we're all human, and this is an important time in our country. And the riots and the looting the first couple days was really bad.
It was horrible.
But those weren't the protesters. And those are opportunists taking advantage of a situation. And in the last week, all of the protests have been peaceful, and change is happening. Yeah,
it does feel like that. You know, I remember the riots, the Rodney King riots in the early 90s, and it didn't feel the same as it does now. Like, as far as I remember that feeling of helplessness and that feeling of chaos and all that with the looting and the rioting, but it felt like an outpouring of anger, but without, it didn't feel like a period of change to me as this does. And I don't know whether that reflects just how I feel now or whether it really is different.
You know what, though? It's one of those things where everybody's just fed up. And if you don't think that there is systemic racism in this country, I mean, you're not paying attention.
Correct.
You know,
Correct.
That's all I can say. And I will say this: I have a few friends that are listeners on Facebook that have become my friends, and then I've lost a few.
Yeah.
So let me just say, if your knee-jerk response to Black Lives Matter is all lives matter, you don't get it.
You have to understand it before you can. I mean, there is that knee-jerk reaction. Well, what does that mean? You know, but I think once it's defined for you and you don't understand it, then you have a problem. But like when I heard the movement to defund the police, my first reaction was, well, geez, I don't know. We've had a lot of break-ins here.
Yeah, it's confusing.
In my garage, and that to me, and I don't think we want to defund them. But I read further what it was about.
Yeah, it's confusing.
I don't think defund the police is the right slogan. If I were Darren Stevens on Bewitched, and I had to come up with
Darren?
I know I would come up with. Well, I'd ask my wife, the witch, to come up with something, an ad campaign for me at the last minute.
Nose
exactly.
Yeah.
I have been revisiting Bewitched all through this.
Of course you have.
All through this quarantine, and I'll tell you, it is quite a balm for me. I mean, it really is to sit and watch that.
A balm, BALM?
Yeah, a BALM. Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
I get
Bewitched is the balm, but it is also a balm.
It's the bomb.
But if I were, if you remember the show, Darren Stevens was an advertising executive, and he always had to come up with these campaigns. And my first thought was, when I read about the defund the police slogan, I thought that's not a very good slogan. That doesn't really say it only says half of it. It doesn't say the other half. It doesn't say let's appropriate money in other ways and give the police just one job to do and not every job of social ills, to try to. They shouldn't be trying to get homeless people off the streets, too. They need to be dealing with crime.
That makes way more sense.
Right?
Yes.
I don't know what that slogan is, but I don't think the slogan defund the police does it justice.
It should be called, it should just be
reimagine, reconfigure,
what did they used to say? Reform.
Reform,
I guess they tried that before and it didn't work. So
right.
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't have the answer. I just know that I did not understand what it meant when I first heard it, and I'm sure I'm not the only one because I'm somewhat intelligent and I'm very liberal. So my first thought was, again, like, we've had all these break-ins. I don't want to be able to call the police when they.
Yeah, my daughter's been all over that, and I've been like, what? That is crazy. But yeah, it needs to be, it's too simple. It's so simple that the government jumps on it because they just work in single sentence catchphrases anyway.
Right.
And so if they think that's all it believes, it means, then, we need something a little more succinct.
You know what I did,
suppose.
Julie?
What'd you do?
Because I didn't know what to do with everything I was feeling when I was watching all of these protests. And like I just said, wanting to be there, but not feeling like I could be there physically, and wanting to support it. As I'm like, I'm going to use my art. I'm a songwriter, and I wrote a song. I wrote a protest song.
Did you?
Yeah, and it came out unlike anything I've ever written before. Like, it's not a musical theater song.
Oh, I want to hear it.
Yeah, I'll send it to you.
Okay.
And now I'm just looking for someone. I recorded the demo myself, but I am not the person who should be delivering this song. It really should be a person of color.
A person of color?
Yes.
So maybe not me either?
Yeah, not you either. I would ask you because you have a fantastic job. And you know what? You would actually do a really great job on this tune.
Oh, well,
but
that's
anyway,
nice.
I am going to try to find somebody. And then what I'd like to do is maybe put it out on social media.
That's awesome.
Ask people to donate to a Black Lives Matter charity so that I don't want anything from it. I just want it to do good in the world, because that would be my contribution, however small it is. So
I love it.
And if I ever do, I'll make sure, if we ever get a decent recording by somebody who should deliver that message, we can always put the link on our Facebook page.
Yes, absolutely. Yes. Well, I know we both have lots of friends of color, so I'm sure we can find somebody.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Should we get started on the big show?
I think we should.
All right. Hey, welcome back, everybody. All right. Let's start with the corrections corner. First correction was, remember I said my daughter was graduating cum laude?
Yes.
My mistake, magna cum laude.
Wow. I don't know the difference between all of those Latin phrases.
Magna is a little more impressive than just cum.
Oh, it's
apparently.
it's like the Magnum.
Yes.
Never mind.
Yeah. Whatever.
They're a little more impressive.
Yes, it's a little more impressive. I think it has to do with GPA. So yeah.
That's great. Congratulations,
woo-hoo. Congratulations, Lily Jackson. What are you going to do with your life? Okay.
Is that question to me? Because I still don't know, and I graduated college years ago.
We're giving her the summer to figure it out, and then it's time to buckle down.
Well.
Okay, so that was that. And the second one is, last week I was talking about the Bataan Death March.
Yes.
The soldiers.
Yes,
and I
we discussed
mispronounced. That. I slaughtered the name of the place, and I think I said Cabanatuan. It's Cabanatuan.
Oh, wow.
Like Cabana to on.
How did you find that out? Did you look it up? Or did somebody tell you mispronounced it?
I've been mispronouncing it from the beginning, and I'm thinking that and I've heard people say it, but then I forget where to put the emphasis. So this time I wrote it down phonetically.
Good for you.
Cabana to on.
I love that your corrections corner are like how you mispronounce something. It's
very important. It's very important to me.
It's not like, I got that fact wrong. I mean, it could be, but I mean, it's mostly like these little small things. Like I forgot magna in front of the cum laude.
I didn't forget it. I didn't know it. We didn't, at the time that I said that, we just thought it was cum laude. We didn't know that it was magna until she got a message about it. So
wow.
Things just kept getting better and better.
That was her message. Your mom screwed it up on the podcast, and so we need you.
Nope, nobody even listens in my family, so I live in my own little world in this podcast with you and the listeners.
Well, I don't think anyone in my family listens either. But correct me, family, if I'm wrong. Let me know that you are.
Yeah,
listening.
shout out, guys.
But I have a feeling I'm going to hear crickets.
Yeah, I have some family in Australia that listens, and I think my daughter listens occasionally.
Yeah.
And I think my mother-in-law listens.
I mean, it's a lot to ask. I mean, this is our 102nd episode. That's a lot. Yes. 102 hours of listening.
It's a lot of catching up. We're getting a lot of listeners that are like, "Yay! I love this podcast. I'm up to 52." I'm
really?
Like, "Oh, you got a long way to go."
Well, good. No, that's good. Got to start somewhere.
Exactly. And the beginning is a very good place to start.
As we know, yes.
As we do know. As we do know. All right. Have you started watching The Genetic Detective yet?
I have not.
Oh, so good.
But I've been my own genetic detective because I've been getting all of these emails from Ancestry telling me I have all these hints, or is this person in your family? And so I hadn't signed on in a long time. Mm-hmm. And I did sign on, and I looked, and I was, again, like we've talked about this, so I should know more about it, or I should have understood it. But as soon as I saw that, like, I could see my grandmother's parents that I didn't know anything about, like that,
yeah.
Or I saw the ship's manifest where my grandmother came over from Ireland, like with her name on it. It was really shocking to me in a good way, like, wow. And then I saw. I remember my mom telling me about her parents owned an Army-Navy store years, like long before I was born, when she was a little girl. Somehow, one of the records that came up, I think it was my grandfather's selective service card or something. It had his business address, and then I just, like, for the fun of it, I Google mapped it. And like looked at the corner and like that's where their store was, and then I Googled the address that he had because I didn't know where they lived.
That is my most favorite thing to do.
It was so cool. Well, I thought of you because I remember you telling me how you would Google map these places, and you could actually kind of take a little tour of where your relatives.
Yes,
and I got really
that.
moved, like when I just seeing that, knowing that my mom used to talk about this store, and I knew my grandmother. I didn't know my grandfather, but it's. Yeah, it's bringing up. I see why people like to do this.
It gives you. It puts faces to the past, and it connects you to the past, and it humanizes your ancestors.
Yes. When you see a signature on, on a card or something like that from back then, or. I forget what record it was. It was the Irish Census. That's what it was. It was the Irish Census, and there was, I guess it must have been my great-grandfather who had filled it out and signed it.
Okay.
And there was, he mentioned my grandmother's name there, and she was like 5 years old.
Mm-hmm.
It's crazy to see that.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yep, it is. I've talked before many times about my third great grandfather, Alexander Price, who disappeared after 5 of his kids were born and never to be seen again. And then I found him 50 years later in New Zealand. And the way I confirmed that it was him was the signature from one of his children's birth certificates matched a signature on a document from New Zealand.
Crazy, right?
I know. I mean, it was shakier and older, but it was him. I mean, that's incredible.
Well, I didn't even know, because it feels like once my grandmother came over from Ireland on my dad's side, I only heard about 2 other sisters, and that's because those were the ones who had also come over and that were in the States. I didn't even know how many other brothers and sisters she had.
Yeah.
And I looked on that census, and living with her they all had names that were the same names of my uncles, her kids. Like, she named her children after her brothers and sisters.
It's the Irish naming patterns.
Yeah, there was like the Daniel in both of them. There was the George. There was the,
Which is lovely, but so annoying for genealogists.
Right, trying to find which one it is.
It makes so much harder. Yeah, it's true. I really wish, and I wish this was a law, I wish that all children's middle names were the mother's maiden name.
Mm-hmm.
That would be so helpful to all involved.
Well, I was going to tell you is that I added some of these members to my tree just from the census information, because I'm not a member of Ancestry. There's a lot of hints I couldn't look at because you click on it and it says now you need to join in order to see it.
That's how they get you.
Yeah, I know, and I was almost ready to, and I thought, well, Julie's going to look at it for me. So I just hope that I didn't add anybody I shouldn't have. I mean, that wasn't confirmed.
My husband did that at one point, and I had to literally deconstruct his tree and start again.
This is why, as I was doing it, I realized, maybe I should wait for Julie to look at it because she knows what she's doing, and I'm adding these people just based on what they said. It says on the census in the household, and maybe there needs to be another confirmation.
Well, You can. The census is pretty reliable as long as everything somewhat matches up, even though there were mistakes in censuses too.
Right, but say, I don't know, say it's about who lives in your household, and what if you lived with your
Yes.
brother and his children, you know? And so I thought, my brother, that would be cousins.
And that's very helpful, yes. And it'll usually say on the census, brother or sister-in-law.
I see, relation to
Yes,
the head of the
yes.
household, right?
Yes. And
I saw
oftentimes,
that.
I've said this before, look at all the other people on the street, on the same street, because families lived close together, if not in the same house, all those years ago. So it's a good way to find the rest of the family.
Well, again, I'm going to have you look at it, but I was really fascinated.
Yeah.
So went down that rabbit hole for a little while.
Good. It's easy, isn't it? Easy to go down there.
Oh, it is. And again, I should understand this because after doing 102 hours of this with this podcast, but I was looking at it, I was getting all excited.
Yeah. It's cool. It's cool.
It is cool.
It's cool. Very easy to make a mistake.
Yes.
It's a lesson in patience.
Well, you're going to have to tell me all about it over the break.
Okay, but before we go to the break, I just want to say one more thing because so that we can just start fresh on the other side. Ancestry is having their Father's Day sale, $59 for an ancestry test. Go stock up.
All right, we'll see you on the other side of the break.
Easy for you to say.
Yeah.
If you're enjoying our podcast, please subscribe, rate, and review. Or consider supporting us on our Patreon page, patreon.com/CutOff Jeans Podcast. Now back to Julie and me.
All right, we're back.
Hello.
Hello. Okay, so we're getting into the adoptee realm again this week, just because this is something I want to talk about, and it's my podcast.
It's your podcast, and you'll cry if you want to.
Exactly. Precisely. So there has been the term rehoming has been running around the adoptee message boards.
Oh, I saw
late.
something about this, and I couldn't even read it because as soon as I saw the word rehoming, it made me
exactly.
ill.
It's the word rehoming that'll get you.
It sounds like a pet.
Exactly. Precisely. And in fact, remember on last week's podcast when I was talking to Shane Bouel in the first half of his interview, he said that's how his parents explained it to him. They said, you're adopted. And he said, what's adopted? And he goes, well, when you get a dog and you invite it into your family, that's adopted. And so he used to go around telling people he was a dog. So, yeah, that's pretty harsh. So I'm not going to talk too much about these people, and I don't want to throw them under the bus too much because we all have our own...
Picadillos.
Yes, picadillos, and we also don't know all the details, okay?
I don't know any of them because, like I said, as soon as I saw that, I couldn't look at it.
Yeah, I'm just going to touch on it. So this woman, Mika Stouffer, she is a YouTube personality, and it looks like her, from what I could watch, what I did watch of it, it looks like she's just kind of like a mommy, how-to lifestyle type
guru
YouTuber. Yes, and they're very pretty people, and they have tips and all this stuff, and they have they have I think 3 of their own children and 2 children that are adopted from China. And the youngest, who's now 4.5, so they documented their whole journey of adopting this little boy. I'm not even going to say his name, from China. And, it was apparently very heartwarming. And I guess somewhere along the way, he was diagnosed as autistic.
Okay.
And then I guess at some point things quieted down and they just stopped talking about him. So recently they posted something on their YouTube channel saying that they had, and she never used the term rehome. That's something that was taken by somebody else. And so that was not their choice of words. Thank God. But apparently he had a lot of needs that were not being met at their household. Maybe he was hurting the other kids. I don't know. But they were in over their head, and they, used medical professions and went back to the adoption agency and found a better placement for him.
All
and
right.
that's where he is now. And it's heart-wrenching, and it's heart-wrenching to watch. And I don't think they're bad people. I think it's unfortunate that what I'm getting at, for me personally, is that right in and of itself speaks to the mind of an adoptee. Because that's exactly what you go through. When you know you're adopted, the thought of, well, they could send me back at any point, right? If I'm defective in some way, or if they view me as defective, what if I'm not good enough? And that really is the crux. I've talked about this before, but the crux of my perfectionism and my desire to be an overachiever and to prove myself and all of this crazy, stuff. That the bottom line is, it comes from the feeling that I'm just not good enough. I mustn't be good enough.
I totally understand that. And I mean, everybody, I think, to some degree has a fear of abandonment.
Especially if you've been abandoned.
Yeah, no, exactly. Especially. I remember, and I don't want to, talk out of school, but my mom, who is no longer with us, told me, she had issues about this. And I'm no doubt that when she was a little girl, when she was bad or whatever, that her mother, my grandmother, used to threaten to send her off to the bad little girls' school, which I don't know, maybe that was just something of the time, or maybe it was just really inappropriate even then. But she, as an adult woman, my mother would cry when she would tell me about how upset she would get that her mother would send her somewhere. And my mother was not adopted, but the idea of that abandonment, I'm going to send you away somewhere,
Yeah, that's a deep cut, and that's something you just should never tell your children you're going to send them away anywhere. That's not good parenting, guys. I'm sorry. It's really not.
I mean, again, I hate judging, something from 60, 70 years ago by today's standards, but it doesn't sound like something that would ever be a good idea.
Yeah, it was very common, though. It was very common, though. And there are people who don't know that there are still people out there who aren't aware that children take things very literally, because that's how the human brain works. We don't understand subtlety when our brain is developing.
Yeah.
Neither do I.
Still don't
Frank.
sometimes.
I'm very literal. I take commercials. I have so much guilt about the state of my house because of commercials. But anyway, let's just move on from that. So my point was, this is awful. They didn't use rehoming, but I can't. My real takeaway from this is that if he had been their biological child, that would not have even been an option. Because can you imagine sending your biological child away?
No.
But it was somehow more acceptable because he was their adopted child.
I can't, but I'm sure there are instances where, say, you have two children and one is autistic and one just becomes more than they can handle that. And I mean, I'm sure that they have been sent to institutional settings just so that because the parents couldn't handle it. I'm not saying that was right or wrong, or again, I can't personally imagine it. I mean, never. But I say that without the experience of being terrified that something was going to happen. Now,
don't you have experience with your mom and your brother? Didn't they tell your mom that she should institutionalize?
Yes,
Philip?
when my brother Philip was born with Down syndrome. Her doctors and I believe several people in the family told her that she should institutionalize him and that he would never live. I think they told me he wouldn't live past 5. And my brother just turned 55.
Exactly.
And she said, "Look, I came into this hospital with him, and I'm not leaving without him." And so anyway, yes. And I grew up in a home with someone, but there was also never a fear of him doing something to me. I'm the younger brother,
Yes, everybody has different. I remember on Oprah years ago, there was this family, and they had 2 kids, and the older daughter had very severe bipolar disorder, to where she was violent, and so the parents ended up having to get 2 apartments, and one lived with one child and one lived with the other. and they would like switch back and
Right.
forth.
Right. And I mean, you could bring that up to like drug addiction or other things that as people get older, kids get older, if they becomes so difficult. I don't know the answer to that. I've never had to experience that, but God, I can't imagine that it would be so bad that you would send them to never see
Well, I think
them
they
again.
they were rehomed. They rehomed him, and I'm using that term. They rehomed him with a medical professional, and apparently he's thriving. And I guess they probably do see him still sometimes, but the whole thing bites, basically.
Oh, it really makes my
mine
heart
too.
sink.
Mine too.
And anybody with a soul, I think, would listen to the story and feel the same way. At least, I would
it's
hope
harsh.
that they would. But I'm not sure because there's a lack of empathy in this world, and I didn't know existed
until recently.
And so maybe,
Yeah.
I was blissfully ignorant about that lack of empathy, but I see it all
me
around
too.
me now, and it's
is.
a little heartbreaking. It makes me have empathy
For the non-empathetic empath.
Yeah.
Are you an empath? I'm an empath. I'm too much of an empath. That's the biggest problem I have in my job.
Oh.
That's why I feel like I need to solve everybody's case right now, because I put myself in their situation, and I need to get over that.
Sure, yeah. But even though it is probably more, it would probably be easier to not have empathy for people, because then you could just take care of yourself.
And that would make you a sociopath.
But yeah, I just would never. I would rather have that feeling of relating to somebody and being able to feel that than to not feel it.
Absolutely. I guess there are times when I've wanted to not feel, but then I had a glass of wine.
Well, like when I saw this story, about rehoming, and I said to myself, I can't read this without, like, I'm reading in bed at night, on my iPad. I can't go to sleep.
It'll trigger. It's triggering. It was triggering to me too. I think that was the main point of the whole thing. I'm like, why? And it goes to listen to adoptees. We know what we're not making it up. This is how we feel. It's how anybody feels is legit. So, okay.
Right.
Should we take a break?
Let's take a break.
Thank you for listening to Cut Off Jeans with Julie Dixon Jackson and Richard Castle. You can support us by going to patreon.com/Cutoff Jeans podcast. Now, back to the program.
We're back and it's story time.
Yay! It's been a few weeks since story time.
It's been a couple weeks, and I got an earful on Facebook about if we're gonna do have 2 weeks in between podcasts, to please do better about recapping story time if I leave a cliffhanger.
I think that's pretty fair.
Okay, so this was Shane Bouel, who is our Aussie friend. And he was talking about, when we left off, talking about how he had found where his mother was and decided, instead of writing a letter and waiting for the mail to post it, that he and his wife were going to drive 2 hours to her house and deliver it by hand. So then he parked at the top of the driveway and sent his wife down to knock on the door. And nobody answered, but as she was heading back to the car, a car pulled down to the driveway and blocked her in.
Wow. Tune in next week. This is next week.
Turn in now.
All right, let's listen.
I got Tracy to walk it down the driveway, and I was out in the car on the street.
Gosh.
And she knocked on the door, and no one was home.
Oh, okay.
So she was just about to turn away and then walk back up towards the car when a car came down the driveway and kind of blocked her in, and it was a girl hopped out.
Uh-huh.
And we didn't know whether it was her or whether it was maybe a daughter. I don't know, but it was actually her flatmate.
Okay.
And that lady said, "Can I help you?" And Tracy said, "Leslie Mitchell left here." Yes. Can I ask what it's about? No. Can I give you this private letter? Yes. What's it about? Oh, I'd rather
private,
not say.
right?
It's private. So it was quite awkward.
Yeah.
And she goes, "Oh, thank you," and then off she went. So apparently Leslie at that particular day was Caloundra or Sunshine Coast seeing my siblings.
Okay.
Okay. So she got back on the Sunday night, and then it was a long weekend, so she messaged me first thing Monday morning on this particular long weekend.
Okay.
And the Facebook message came through, and we were lying in bed, and I couldn't operate. I just went all jitters and fumbling everything, and dropped the iPad, and and I said that, Tracy, you have to read it. I can't even think.
Yeah.
So she read it out.
It's visceral, isn't it?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It's crazy. And we were both in tears. I was jumping up and down in the bed, So we chatted for a bit. She said, look, just give me 24 hours. I have to go back up to the Sunshine Coast and inform my siblings as to what's happening, because they didn't know that she had adopted out a son.
Right.
So she said, no more lies. This is it. It's happening. Mm-hmm. She got in contact with them, met them on the beach that night, and said, okay, this is what's happening. Tomorrow I'm going to go see my first son. And they were like, okay. So the following night we met up at the local pub up at Cleveland, and, it was amazing.
And obviously it was a success. You're very close now.
Yes, we are. I mean, we're in daily contact. We're always messaging on Facebook.
Yeah.
We have a lot to do with a lot of adoption advocacy. So it's kind of nice to have a common goal to
Absolutely, and it's so important that you're a team, and so rarely do people get to hear from the first mother.
No.
And she has such a story to tell that we've already heard. How long did it take for her to get to her experience having you?
I'm not going to lie.
Yeah.
It was bloody hard.
Yeah.
To go through that with her again, and same for her with me. For me to be, distant and not want to talk about what I went through, because that's how I dealt with it.
Yeah.
She was just always there. We just sat, didn't talk. We just sat and cried. Yeah. We just experienced it again with each other.
It sounds so cathartic.
And it was a long process. It wasn't overnight. People have the belief that, fantastic adoption reunions, everyone's happy, Larry.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's happy.
It's quite the myth. It's not like the TV shows, is it?
No.
Yeah.
No. You have that initial burst of excitement and that adrenaline, and it's that cortisol obviously is there, and it's pushing through your system, and you're getting pumped up. But
Absolutely.
It's just adrenaline and all that sort of stuff. But it kind of wears off, and then you're left with the reality. Okay,
right.
Who is this person? How do I make a relationship? How do I now find the cornerstone foundations of this relationship? How do I move forward with her and her family?
Mm-hmm. So you were looking for a relationship. Were you open to if she hadn't wanted a relationship?
Well, if that happened, that happened.
Yeah.
And that's happening with my birth father.
Right.
Yeah.
Let's talk about him now.
I'm debating whether I should actually let his name out in a public setting like this.
Have you done it before?
No, I have let people know in closed groups.
Yeah, I would say don't mention his name.
Yeah.
Yeah, just because it's not necessary.
No, it's unfortunate because him being who he is, and I'm quite an artistic person, and I'm very creative.
Are you a musician?
I'm not. My wife Tracy is, and she has been for 35 years of her career.
Right.
And that's all she's ever done.
Yeah.
And me, I was very arty-farty. I was always drawing and doing something like that. And I had picked up the bass guitar on and off. I'm actually going to buy another one tomorrow. Yes, but I'm probably more of a visual person.
Yep.
So I got into graphic design and ended up doing a lot of that professionally as a career. I ended up teaching graphic design.
So you're a creative anyway. You're still using that side of your brain, right?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how did you? So she told you who he was, obviously.
Yes.
And then how did you go about finding him?
Well, look, there's a little bit of a story behind that, and I don't want to put Leslie in a bad light, and I do think that this has got a lot to do with the trauma that she'd experienced, and she wasn't thinking clearly. Now, initially, she said to me, "It was this guy," and we struck up a conversation with his wife and 2 daughters. And I was conversing with them very, very, very well. Things were going extremely well with them. And she said, okay, well, just out of curiosity, would you be open for a DNA test? I said, yeah, sure, go ahead, knock yourself out. And the test came back negative. And at this point, she hadn't mentioned the other guy at all.
So was she just not sure?
I guess so.
Okay.
I mean, yeah, because my understanding of the situation is she was deeply traumatized.
Yeah.
And you suppress memories, apparently. Okay, and I've done that. And
so was my mother.
Look, and trying to make sense of that time in her life.
Yeah.
I completely and utterly understand. Things could have been handled differently. I love Leslie dearly, and she's done her utter best for me, and I appreciate that very much.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, it was kind of weird. It was kind of
I love that you told me that, though, because that's I don't feel like I'm so crazy, because that same thing happened to me.
Look, we were devastated when we found out it wasn't to be, because I'm going, who is it then?
How long have you known him for?
Well, we hadn't. Oh, maybe. I mean, I hadn't spoken to him personally, but it was probably a good 3-4 months. We were conversing with his wife and daughters, and they were wonderful.
But you hadn't developed a relationship with him yet?
No.
Okay. Wow. All right. So then you went back to Leslie and said what?
I don't want to get into what happened. It was quite traumatic for me, and I went in for a bit of a dive. Emotionally, I wasn't coping very well.
Okay.
And almost lost my job and, all that sort of stuff. And finally found my feet again. We recovered. We were both there for each other. It was a little bit iffy for a bit. I mean, these things test your relationship.
Absolutely.
We were under no disillusion as to how difficult this was going to be.
Yeah.
And if you think it's going to be plain sailing, don't do it.
Yeah.
Don't do it.
Yeah, you have to go in hoping for the best but expecting the worst.
Absolutely.
Worst. Yeah. All right. So she gave you another name. Yeah.
So this is him, and oh wow, I thought obviously that's where the creative thing comes from, and sort of did a bit of research on him, and he's well-to-do in the Nashville scene.
Mm-hmm.
A music producer. I could drop names, but I'm not going to. But it's kind of interesting. Yeah, so I proceeded to write a letter to him, and it wasn't any letter. I actually, by doing what I do, I write quite well. So I designed it up in an actual poster format, nice and big. Designed it up with a background, photos, and everything. Framed it in glass, nice big frame. And I posted it to a mate in California, who then reposted it locally from California to Nashville.
Wait, you framed the letter.
Yeah.
And sent it, had your friend in California send it to him.
Correct.
Okay. And then what happened?
He wasn't returning anything at all.
Right.
There has been no contact.
Silence.
Silence. There hasn't been any contact directly from him to me. We proceeded to get in contact with Chris again from Jigsaw, and Chris made contact with him via email, and an email came back, said he's not ready. He's not ready, but when he's ready, he'll make contact. I don't think he's ever going to be ready.
Yeah, I'm wondering if he thinks... Do you think he thinks you're after his money?
Oh,
It happens a lot that people think that.
I mean, I'm going to say something controversial. He's a guitarist, and guitarists have a bit of an ego.
You think? Okay. I'm a musician too, so I know these things.
Just ask my wife.
Okay. All right. Wow.
But anyway.
So you think so you've had no contact. Have you had any cease and desist or anything, or?
No, just don't do it. Basically.
Ugh.
Yeah. So
that's so frustrating.
it is. Look, but on the plus side, I've met his son, my half brother.
Oh, well, that's great.
Yeah. So we were in. Well, I made contact with him on LinkedIn. 3 years ago, probably more even. Mm-hmm. And the message sat there unanswered for nearly 2 years.
Wow.
And then one day out of the blue, I got this reply. He was coming to Australia. Can you meet with me Thursday? So this is like a Tuesday. Awesome. And I said, yeah. So we met in Brisbane on the Thursday. And oddly enough, our father was flying into Brisbane on the following Friday, and my brother was due to fly out that morning, and we could have had the opportunity to all meet together, but he chose not for that to happen.
So he knew that his other son was his sons were meeting, basically.
Well, I think he did. I'm not 100% certain, but he definitely knew that his other son was in Brisbane at that particular time.
Wow.
And they both live in the States. So you take that as you see.
Yeah.
So
Well, I'm glad you reached out to him though, to the because I've had so many biological parents call me back for other people that I'm working for, saying I want no contact and he is not to contact my family.
Yeah.
And at which point I say, well, guess what? Your family are all adults. Yep. And so is my client. So this is on you. You might want to prepare them if you haven't told them anything. Not that, I don't want to scare anyone or threaten anyone, but people need to get their crap together, It's not, you can't deny another human their existence.
No. But then again, people try. This is the issue, and you have narcissistic traits of certain people involved, and they push their wills onto other people, and other people fold.
Yep.
And this is what happens.
Yeah.
It's terrible. It shouldn't happen like that.
No. Are you still in touch with the brother?
Yeah. I'm on Instagram and LinkedIn. We kind of message each other. Like we follow their dog Ollie on Instagram, and we reply to posts, and we kind of keep in contact like that.
Yeah,
it's quite bizarre, but it works.
Yeah, no, that's great. Yeah. That's great. I'm glad you're in touch with him. It's it's one thing too. I don't know what you said in your framed letter to him, but I always make a point of saying, look, I don't want anything. I don't even, it's up to you. But exactly. I'm here and I'm a human being and, I have half of your DNA. So,
It's kind of a gist of it, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep, always.
Yeah. Wow. So that's where we are, huh?
Mm. Yeah, so now moving forward, my adoptive family and I don't speak at all. When we haven't for probably 4 years.
Yeah.
And during that sort of fallout, it became extremely vitriolic, and I went in for another bout of depression, and I was seeing psychologists, and funnily enough, one of my adoptive twin sisters is a professional psychologist, and she failed to see what was going on. Even though I wrote a personal letter to her explaining my concerns and what I thought was going on in terms that she would definitely understand.
Right.
And I asked her in the letter, please do not take this to anyone else. This is in confidence between you and I. And what does she do? She threw me under the bus immediately.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
And then proceeded to stalk Leslie, Tracy, and I on Facebook.
Really? Oh, geez. Maybe send her a copy of The Primal Wound. Maybe that might be a good one to have in her.
Well, I really do hope my adopted mother takes or has a chance to read that, because at least then she could acknowledge her own trauma.
Or the girls who went away is a good one, because that's right, because she gave a child up too. So that would be an excellent book to send her. That's amazing to me that she doesn't get it.
Denial.
Yes.
Complete and utter denial.
Yeah. Oh, wow. I'm really sorry to hear that. That's an incredible story. Thank you so much for sharing it in such a personal way. I really appreciate it. Shane, thank you so much for talking to me and telling this story. It's been amazing. And please keep in touch with us, okay?
I will. Thank you so much.
All right. All right. Thank you so much, Shane, for your honesty and your insight.
Thank you, Shane. That was really interesting.
Guys, if you'd like to tell your story, you know how to reach out to me. I love telling your stories, and everybody's story is interesting, legitimate, and valid.
Definitely.
Yes.
On that note, my valid story is I am Richard Castle. I have a website, richardcastle.com. Please visit it, or follow me on the Twitter @CastleSongs. And I'm Julie Dixon Jackson. Follow me on the Twitter @JulesJackson with 2 O's. Follow the podcast on Twitter @CutOffJeansPod. Join the Facebook group, Cutoff Jeans Podcast. Drop me a line, JulesJackson@CutOffJeans.com. And, as always, 2 things. Black Lives Matter, and the truth is in your jeans.